Hello, Kathryn. I am so glad that you are here and joining us to talk about your new book, Sit, Write, Share Practical Writing Strategies to Transform Your Experience into Content That Matters. It is beautiful. And I see you're wearing the matching outfit.
I am. I had to dress for the occasion.
Now, I have known Kathryn for many years. We both did our master's degree at the University of Pennsylvania, our master's in applied positive psychology. And Kathryn is a writing coach and has helped dozens and dozens of Mapsters write books. And now you have bundled up all these incredible strategies that you use with authors and aspiring authors. And I'm just so thrilled that you have this treasure trove of information for writers, Kathryn. Congratulations.
Well, thank you. Thank you.
Well, I wanted to share, so there is an endorsement on your book written by Sherry Fisher, another one of our MAP friends, and I wanted to read it to you because I just thought it was such a great description. It says, whether you want to become a writer for the first time or to stop polishing without publishing, Sit, Write, Share is for you. Using simple and elegant prose, Kathryn Britton offers writers comforting structure, more than 50 practical, creative, experiential writing experiments, and numerous inspiring stories based on her decades of experience as a writer, editor, and coach. Sit, Write, Share will help you defeat your writing demons, design a sustainable, personalized writing practice, and discover joy in sharing and receiving feedback about your writing. Perfect. Did we get that right?
Yeah, absolutely. And let me just say, I love the fact that she mentions discover joy, because one of the things that got me to write the book was I started realizing how much I enjoy writing. Yes. And I also started realizing by working with people how little joy they got out of writing and how much they dreaded it. And so I started thinking, well, why do I enjoy it? And what is it that I do that other people might use as a pathway to finding joy in writing? So that is at least my hope, part of my hope for the book.
Well, yeah, I think so. And even there was something, I'm sorry, I've taken so many notes, so I'm going to be looking down. Even one of the things you talk about, and we'll go back to the structure, but you talked about a commonplace book. And I love that idea of, and in the book it says, Commonplace Book is an annotated personal anthology, a collection of words and ideas that have changed, enhanced, or broadened the mind of the person who creates the commonplace book. And each commonplace book is unique to the individual who makes it, gathering together anything that has affected the person throughout his or her lifetime. And I thought to myself, you don't have, I thought that that's what you were doing. You were bringing these ideas of how writing could be pleasurable, because that actually appeals to me without thinking that I have to write another book. I can just be writing a collection of these beautiful things, ideas, inspirations, and just write for the joy of writing. I love that idea.
Fabulous. I hope you create one.
Yes, I am. You have inspired me to create one for sure. Now, I guess people need to know too that you were my writing coach, and you were instrumental in getting my book out. And while there's a lot of books about publishing books or marketing books, your book is really about writing the book. And that's where I felt you really helped me. It was about getting the book out the door. And it's hard. It is hard if you're not a writer to, to just sit. And maybe that's where you can start. Why did you think it was so important to write a book about writing? Because there's so much that you do with people.
Well, the first thing I want to do, Louisa, is correct you in one respect, which is to say, I really don't like to hear the words, I am not a writer. Oh. We're all writers, we make grocery lists, we write emails, we send letters, we all write. So it's a little bit like saying I'm not a speaker, even though you can talk to people perfectly well. The question is whether or not it's something that you want to do in a more intentional way where you actually build the skills by paying attention to how you write and getting better at it. So we're all writers to start out with, but we could become better and better writers. So one way of doing this, and I have one of the people that inspired me was a man named Richard Gabriel, who wrote the book Writers' Workshops, or The Art of Making Things. And one of the things he says several times in his book is that you build skill by practicing and paying attention. So one of the things I wanted to do in my book was to help people find ways both to practice and to pay attention to what they're doing, so that they could then, it isn't just a matter of a random walk, they could actually intentionally get better at writing. And
Yes.
out of doing that, maybe observe times when the writing actually becomes fun, pleasurable, illuminating, helps them see things that they didn't otherwise see. I have a lot of writers that tell me that writing helps them see things. It helps them understand what's going on in their lives if they take some time, even if they're writing about something else. The process of writing helps them see what's going on in their own lives a little bit more clearly.
Yeah, like journaling. Yeah, so many people get so much out of that. Now, you have divided, and just as the title of your book implies, sit, write, share, you've kind of divided it up. How did you come up with those three different, I guess we could call them categories, or tell us more about the structure?
Well, I had a writing client who was really frustrating me. It was because he was having a lot of trouble actually getting the writing out. And so one day I said to him, we were in a call, and I said to him, just sit, write, share. And he said, oh, that would be a great title of a book. So, so my thought was, okay, sit means get your butt in the chair so that you actually get the writing done. Write is the actual process of writing. And then share is you write for a purpose. You write for other people, and you can get help from other people. So the share is a broad category there. But what I realized, I took, by the way, I run writers' workshops, and I took every bit of the book through a writer's workshop. So I got feedback from 3 to 5 people on everything that's in the book. So one of the things when I was presenting the introduction, and I was that I was calling it sit, write, share because of these 3 words that this particular client used as his maxim. He would use that to remind himself to get, sit, write, share. Somebody pointed out that sit is often used as a synonym for meditation and mindfulness practices. So people will say, I sit, and they mean I meditated. And I thought, well, you could use that same mindfulness and paying attention to pay attention to what it is that actually helps you get the writing done. So the whole first part of the book is about building habits and observing the gremlins, those little voices in your head that make it so painful to write. So observing them and learning how to deal with them. So that's the first part of the book is about actually doing the mind work that you need to do to get ready to write.
Okay.
And the second part of the book is the write part. And you might think that would be the biggest part of the book, and indeed it is. But I found I broke it up into 3 parts as well. And I do this for a very particular reason, which is writing is actually multiple activities. So you've got to think of the ideas. You've got to do a lot of imaginary work to come up with the ideas that go into your book. You actually need to write a first draft to get it down. And then you need to polish that draft until it's ready to share with the world. And I find that it really works best if those are 3 separate activities rather than trying to do all 3 at once.
Right. Yes, good.
So sit, write, share. It became my client's maxim, and it became the title of my book.
So you run these writing workshops. So are people share? How does that work? Do people write and then share with others? Is that what they're doing, Kathryn?
Yes, I have regular groups that meet either every week or every other week. It's the same group of people, 4 people that see each other every week,
Oh,
or
okay.
3 people that see each other every other week. And each person submits and reviews. So if you're a member of a writer's work group, there's a, and we, if you're a member of one of these groups, you have a certain schedule for submitting, and then you also get pieces other people have written to review ahead of time. You don't have to provide any written feedback, but you do need to be ready to talk in the meeting. And so
Okay.
we have a very particular way to run them, that where we look both for the strengths of the piece and for the things that could make it even better. So I don't particularly believe in brutal feedback.
Yeah.
I don't, some people will say seek brutal feedback. And I think brutal feedback is for the birds.
Yeah, like you say in the book, nobody wants that. No one actually wants
Nobody,
brutal feedback.
no, they don't know what to do with it when they get it either. And so, but that doesn't mean that everything that you hear is saying this is great. I mean, we do try to point out the things that are great, but we also point out suggestions and give, because not everything works. So sometimes it's helpful for somebody to say, I really got myself confused here. What's going on? Or I really think if you switched it around like this, it might be better. Or you've buried the lead way, way down in the piece. I don't even know what it's about until, and if I weren't reading it for workshop, I probably wouldn't have read that far. So all of that kind of feedback helps people see how to reshape what they're doing to reach a wider audience.
I really like that because I often think that, we're always writing alone, right? And so this idea, first of all, of sharing and then getting feedback, I think can be so helpful. So you're accountable to make sure you get your piece to them by a certain time. So
Exactly.
that's helpful as well. That helps you sit and write. But then to get the feedback, I think is really incredible. And to get constructive feedback, I think is what you're saying, as opposed to the brutal feedback. It's constructive. It's how, and I think that goes back to your original comment at the beginning. Are you paying attention? Right? Are you paying attention to the writing that you're doing, and how you can, it's almost like deliberate practice, getting better and better. And then once you get better at things, you enjoy it more, don't you?
That's what I find.
Yeah.
The other thing is, there are 2 things. One is that people bring first drafts to the workshop. So one of the things that's really helpful to people is to see other people's first drafts, and then sometimes to see multiple drafts, because sometimes people bring the same piece back after they've revised it. And so you get to see, oh, okay, it doesn't have to it doesn't have to be perfect when it first gets onto the page. It can be, I just need something I can work with. And
Exactly.
once you've got the first draft done, then you can go through and edit it to make it something that is much, much smoother and more convincing.
And I think that's one of your strategies in the book too, is just get it out. I remember my editor said to me, Louisa, done is better than good. And I'm like, really? And she's like, yeah, just get something done, right? But it's true. Once you have a draft, then you can go back and think about it. But if you never get the draft out, you'll never get the sort of core ideas out. Now, how did you've written the book in a way that it's a series of experiments. How did this come about? What was your thought around, because a lot of people just give people advice or guidance. You've actually created experiments. Can you tell us more about that?
Well, let me start out by saying that when I was a little girl, if we were in any kind of a dangerous or awkward situation, my mother would look at her 5 children and say, think of it as an experience, as an adventure. Think of it as an adventure. Well,
Okay.
over time, I have morphed that into think of it as an experiment. And what I do when I'm working with people, when I'm coaching people, I might make a suggestion. I might say, this is something you could try, but the same thing doesn't work the same way for everybody. So something that really, really works for you, Louisa, might not work for, for somebody else that you know. And so the idea of going into building your writing practice with an experimental mindset is it gives you the freedom to try things without then feeling like, oh, if it didn't work for me, then I must not be a writer. Instead, you look at it and you say, well, it didn't work for me. Go on to the next one, try something else. So you've got permission to have the things that you try not necessarily work. So I always, when I'm working with clients, and we, a lot of times you come up with, what are you going to do before the next time we meet? And we get back together. And sometimes they'll say, I just couldn't do it, or I just didn't get around to doing it. Rather than being somebody else's guilty conscience, I find it much more effective to say, oh, well, what can we learn from that? Was there something about what we set for you to do that just didn't fit with the way you like to do things? Did you need more time to do it? What can we learn from it? So if you think of it as a set of experiments, what can we learn? If they turn out well, what can we learn about what you like to do? If they don't turn out well, what can we learn about what might be better for you? So that just having an experimental mindset, in my opinion, is a really important part of our shared field, positive psychology, because sometimes people call it things like person activity fit or whatever, but the point is we're all different. So there is no one single recipe for writing any more than there's one single recipe for living.
Yeah, I really like that. I love this idea of having an experimental mindset with this. And then you have so many experiments in the book that I could try. Like, for example, the Commonplace book, that really resounded with me. I thought I could get writing right away with that in mind, because it's not, I don't feel pressure. I feel inspired. Plus, I feel like, oh, I'll have one place where all my really, interesting ideas are in one place that I could give maybe even to my daughters or something. So, and you're right, I haven't even experimented with it yet, and it's already appealing to me. But I'm sure that there are other experiments that maybe appeal more to other people. So this idea, and also the fact that you could try it and it doesn't work. When it's an experiment, you go, okay, well then I'll just try a different experiment, right?
Right.
So I really like the way. And do you use these experiments with your writing clients?
I do. I haven't used them in a very systematic way, but they tend to come up. We've had an experience recently where somebody said, the what I'm working on is just getting so hard that it brings out sort of a lot of negative feelings when I do this writing. So the writers workshop group that he was in, started making suggestions of other things he could do. One person suggested, for example, that he have 2 writing projects going on, so that if he finds that one is sort of a downer at a particular time, that he could switch over to the other. So to have multiple writing projects where he can pick up one, and if it just doesn't feel like it's a good fit today, that he could switch over to the other. So I have used these experiments with at least one, if not many people. But I find, just to reiterate, any particular experience doesn't work for everybody, and it doesn't work all the time.
Yeah.
So you might be in a place right now where you need a particular kind of experiment, but maybe in 6 months you'd be in a completely different place and you need something else.
Exactly.
And so
Yeah.
that awareness, that it changes over time for the same person, and it's different between different people.
Yeah. So, Kathryn, what is one of your favorite sit experiments? If people are finding it hard to actually just start and get started, what's one of your favorites?
Well, I actually like them all, but there is one that is my own personal invention. Okay, so this one, I used to call it use your procrastination hierarchy, but I thought it's a little bit more like Aikido, where you use the energy of your opponent to actually move them the way you want them to go. So I call it use procrastination Aikido. And I'll read you the paragraph, one paragraph from it, so that you can see a little bit what it's like. Nobody is equally motivated by everything they need to do. It is possible to use these differences in motivation to unlock energy for difficult tasks. I used to call this my procrastination hierarchy, but now I think of it as procrastination Aikido because it involves redirecting energy from avoiding a less desirable task towards getting writing done. I learned to manipulate this energy deliberately. If I found myself stalling on something I really needed to get done, I'd make myself think of something I wanted to do even less. That almost always got me going. So, and I will tell you that recently my son came out, he's applying for jobs, and he came out and said, you know, I find that I'm doing all kinds of things like, cleaning my apartment and whatever in order to avoid writing my cover letter. He said, there's something to this procrastination hierarchy.
That's right. So how does it work, Kathryn? So you're suggesting that what am I avoiding the stuff I want to do less?
Well, think of something you want to accomplish and that you're having a little trouble motivating yourself to do.
Okay.
Think of something you want to do even less.
Okay.
And then you can mentally say to yourself, okay, Kathryn, you can either spend your time writing or you can go clean the toilets, or something equally appealing.
Okay, so it's a mind thing. So I'm not actually going and cleaning the toilets. I'm just thinking about cleaning the toilets. I think, well, I would much rather write. Okay. And then writing becomes much more appealing to me because I don't want to be cleaning the toilets. Yes, I love it.
And I have actually some suggestions in the book with, where, and I actually make the point that if writing is absolutely the bottom of your list, then maybe writing isn't something you have to do. If you absolutely can't find anything you'd like to do less than writing, then maybe you're not, this is not the particular practice you want to pursue. It's not for everybody to be, we're all writers, but we don't all need to make it, to put our attention into forming a writing practice.
Yeah. Good point. Okay. One of the things that I loved was I'm going to get the name, the Phil Hansen Embrace the Shake. I don't know what, I can't remember what experiment that is from.
It's from Welcome Constraints.
Yes. Okay. And is that part of SIT?
That's part of SIT.
Yes, it's part of SIT. Okay. Can you tell us more about that? Because I loved that. I loved that one.
Well, I hope that people will go out and watch his TED Talk because it beautifully makes the point. But a lot of times what I found is that people think that if you have it open-ended, you could write anything, you could write as much as you want, you could do whatever you want. Somehow that is stalling. It stalls people. The way Phil expressed it in his TED Talk was that when he could go out and buy every art supply known to man, when he could afford everything, he came home and he just was completely flat. He didn't have any creative energy. Yeah. So what he found was when he put and he made up the constraints, and they're very funny. Some of them are very funny. So watch the video to see. He made up constraints, and by putting those constraints on, it was like he had liberated the energy to actually get some writing done. So there are certain things that you could do. For example, if you had a writing project, you could say, I'm going to see if I can write this with no words that are longer than 2 syllables. Or I'm going to see if I can do it in 100 words exactly. Or I'm going to, you could put arbitrary constraints around it, but those constraints actually do free up creative energy. So it's certainly worth a try.
Yeah, we will put the link to the TED Talk because I found it really fascinating, and thank you for bringing that to us and sharing that. And I find, for example, the Pomodoro effect, which I think you also talk about, is right. Which is just say, because I find that I could take 5 days to write something, or I could take 2 hours to write it. And so by just by putting the timer on and saying by the end of 2 hours, this will be written, you know, I find that kind of constraint really, really helps me, especially when I'm really busy, because otherwise I could just go on and on and on and on, something that hopefully would just takes me 2 hours. But anyway, that works for me. But tell us okay, so what is your favorite write experiment?
Well, my favorite write experiment is about separating drafting from editing. So I have known so many people that start to write and they're looking at the sentence and their little editor in the back of their brain is going, ooh, that's crappy. And before you know it, they've erased the sentence.
Yeah.
And then they've written another sentence and that one's erased. And then they've written another sentence. And so by the time they finish in their whatever the time that they have available, they've written, you know, they could have written 500 words and erased 495. I mean, it's so the way I suggest people think about it is that you've got two writing beings in your head. One of them is called drafter, and drafter gets to just sit down and write, and he doesn't have to worry about spelling things correctly. He doesn't have to worry about complete sentences. He doesn't have to worry. I don't know why I'm calling him he. Let's say she. Okay, so or they, just to be modern.
Okay.
They don't need to worry about anything. They just get the ideas out. The paragraphs don't have to be in the right order. There doesn't have to be a good ending. Nothing matters, just getting the ideas out. And then drafter can say, okay, I've done my share. And editor comes along, which is the other persona. And editor goes through and says, you know, this should probably be here. Maybe you need a little bit more of a story here. Maybe you need to explain this particular term. And so editor comes along and helps, you know, but editor has something to work with. So unlike in the first case where editor never gets anything to work with because it's so busy complaining about the things that are coming out of drafter's fingers, you know, drafter gets its turn and then editor gets its turn. And this separating out, you know, it's being able to realize that a rough draft can be rough. It's okay. That's what a rough draft is. So working for a rough draft and then going back and editing it. And I think of it as if you edit and if you draft and edit at the same time, it's like trying to drive a car with your foot on the brake and the accelerator at the same time. You probably won't go very far, but you'll use up a whole lot of gas. So, you know, so the idea is, you know, you can do this editing and drafting at the same time, but you're likely to use up a whole lot of energy and not get very far.
Yeah, I love that. I love that. And also it just makes you more free, and probably you get a lot of really good nuggets out of just doing, you know, a draft, right? Just getting it down on paper.
Many times I've had workshop people say, I just can't, and just nothing seems to be coming out. And I'll do some form of just write what's in your mind.
Yeah.
Or write about not being able to write. And it turns out that you may not get any kind of, in fact, my very first blog for my new website is all about a particular experience where somebody did this. And, you know, she wrote 370 words. It wasn't something she could publish, but there were 3 story seeds and 2 or 3 concepts in it. So each of those were things that she could take and develop. And so she gave herself some material to work with the next time she chose to write.
I love it. Love it. It's simple, but yet, you know, it doesn't occur. It doesn't occur to us, right? Now tell us your favorite share experiment.
Well, I have been running writers' workshops for about, I guess, since 2013. So that'd be nearly 9 years. And so I have 2 experiments in the book that are about writers' workshops. One is finding a good writers' workshop. And the other one is about, okay, if you want to know how a good writers' workshop could work, here is the technique that I use. So those 2 together express the writers, what I think is a very, very effective way of getting yourself to write regularly, which is to have a group of people to whom you are accountable. You will, you know, they know that you're supposed to, and they will nudge you along. And if you get stuck, they'll brainstorm with you to get you unstuck. And they'll give you feedback. And they're quite ready to have you bring rough drafts So you can take what drafter gave you and just see what kind of response you get to it. And then people might say, well, this isn't, quite ready, but they could do what I did the other day with this one piece and say, ooh, there's 3 story seats. There's 3 things that you could develop out into stories for your ideas. And by the way, there's these ideas in there too. So I'll choose that for my favorite of the share experiments.
Yeah, I think that's great. And I think this idea of sharing is just so good. I love it. And I love that you have these writing workshops. Now, if people want to find out more about your writing workshops and the book, the website sitwriteshare.com. Is that correct?
Yes, it's being published today. So it's coming live today.
Yay. And you have a special deal on your Kindle edition starting on April 28th, 2022. And so we're excited. We'll put all the links, or do you want to tell us more about it?
Well, I don't have the Amazon link yet, but I will provide it to you so that you can put it in there. But the deal is, and this is something when you've got a book, you will learn that one of the things you try to do is create a certain momentum on launch, which is why there's a launch day. Okay, now I had intended to publish my book on Shakespeare's birthday, which is April 23rd. Didn't quite make it, but and besides, it's on a Saturday, and that's not a great launch day. So I'm going to publish it on the following Thursday, which will be April the 28th. Okay. The book will be 99 cents on Kindle for all of April 28th. That's a price to kind of encourage people to go ahead and buy it. So we can create some momentum, which will help with further sales. If you don't quite get it on the 28th, and the 28th would be best, you could come back on the 29th and it'll be $1.99. Okay. If you don't quite get it on the 29th, you can come back on the 30th and it'll be $2.99. So it'll be going up by $1 a day until it hits its list price, which I think is $8.99. So anyway, I'm just trying to say, if you miss the 99 cents, you're not lost, in terms of getting a bargain. Still, I'd prefer you come on the 28th.
But that's good for authors to know. So, for new authors, so when you're launching, create some momentum by having a good deal, some sort of deal on the first day. And of course, our CPPA members are going to be so happy to know that they can get a good deal on the first day. So we will make sure that on the 28th, we supply the link and we'll get that from you and we'll share. Well, there's 50 experiments in the book. So I think people need to go out, especially if you're an aspiring writer, or even if you just want to write more and be inspired by your own writing. It's a great book. So we're excited, Kathryn.
I'm really excited to have pulled it together. And I keep learning things. So I'm working on additions that will end up either in my blog or maybe in a later book. Like, for example, I'm learning a lot about launching a book, and I'm learning a lot about how to manage a launch team, which is another concept that is new to me. So I'm trying to keep information as I go so I can expand in new experiments as I go forward.
Wonderful. Well, we look forward to hearing more about it. And by going to sitwriteshare.com, I'm sure we can learn all about it. And people can also go there and have links to your writing workshops if they wanted to join those as well. Kathryn, is that correct?
I will make sure that there is a link so that people can, and actually, if you fill out the contact form, my writers workshops are a trust community, so I don't put it out. I don't put the sign up link out for sort of anybody in the world to sign up. But I have a contact form. If you get in touch with me and I have a conversation with you, I'll add you to a list of people that I work with. And say Louisa Jewell sent me, and you've got a step on the way.
Well, we're good people at the CPPA. So,
well, I have to say the CPPA inspired this book. So I want to give you credit for that.
Really?
Yes.
How did that happen?
You invited me to speak about writing in 2016, and I got about 15 minutes, and you said, oh, that wasn't enough. So he invited me to come back to the 2018 conference, and I ran a workshop where I talked about 7 keys to unlock your voice. And those 7 keys became 7 of the 55 experiments. And so that was the beginning of it. And I guess I must have had you all in mind as I was putting it together.
Oh, that's so good. That's so good. It's like everything comes about for a reason. And now we are the beneficiaries of hearing more and having more experiments to work with. And again, for everyone who's thinking about writing, yes, there it is. Sit, Write, Share. April 28th, we're going to be on it, Kathryn. Thank you so much. Thank you so much for sharing your wisdom. Thank you so much for being such a big CPPA supporter over the years as well, Kathryn. You've always been part of our community. And we are just so excited for the book that's going to come out, and can't wait. All right. Thanks again, Kathryn.